And it's the Alison Arngrim Show. And I'm Alison Arngrim. Although some of you may remember me as evil Nellie Olson. Yes, but don't worry tonight. I'm Alison Arngrim, and this is the Alison Arngrim Show. And here on the Alison Arngrim Show, we talk about things that make you feel good, the movies and the TV shows that made us feel good, and the people who made them. And people are doing things now to make the world a better and more interesting place. And oh, do I have one tonight? I have one tonight. This is a marvelous man. I met him. It was during the pandemic. He's in New York, and he's a teacher, he's an actor, he cooks, a Renaissance man, if you will. And he was teaching at the time and called me, I have all these people come visit my class, famous people and actors, and would you come and speak to my class? I was like, yes. And we did. It was all, on the internet. And they asked the best questions. It was so cool. They were so smart. They asked such good questions. And he is so marvelous. And then he and I share a complete mania for cooking, and he has written a cookbook. This is actually technically his second cookbook. He has a cookbook, and I'm like looking at it now going, yes, I'm making all these things now. Yes. Mr. Fabulous John Contratti.
How are you?
I'm very good. How are you? Are you in your kitchen?
No, I'm not.
Oh, is that a bed? Your bed.
I'm in a room in my house. It looks like a tablecloth, doesn't it?
It looks like a tablecloth, and you're the cooking, and it's also Italian. I went, it's got like an Italian restaurant tablecloth going back there.
So it's nice to see you.
Good to see you. How are you? Yeah. So when was it? Gosh, when was it we met? And then I came into your classroom virtually via the internet.
It was the September 2020 class. So I think you came late that fall 2020.
Yeah. And they were marvelous. Now, how old were those kids that you were teaching them?
They were about 9 years old.
Seriously, because it was like they were 14. I mean, they were asking really good questions, very savvy. I mean, yes, it's New York, but they were asking very industry savvy questions about television and the making of television and what it's like to be an actor and what it's like to be in the industry, that I was so very impressed. But of course, they talked to a lot of people because you were having a lot of famous people in your class. You'd had them in person and then via video as well.
Exactly. They were a special group of kids. They were very with it, and they just absorbed it. Anything I told them, they all absorbed it. And they were so interested in television of the past. So it worked out great. And you were one of the first, and one of 33 people who hopped into our room.
And it was crazy because that was the thing, because you said, no, they know who you are. Because I was like, well, wait, are they old? I mean, their moms all know who I am. Yeah. But these kids are young. But they'd been requesting a lot of older stars because they're into reruns. They were watching reruns, and they were asking for all of these people that I thought they can't know who these people are. And you're like, no, they took a vote. They this is who they want.
I mean, during the pandemic, they were watching, when we were home from school from March to June of 2020, they were watching all these shows. And then I'm one of those teachers who would show them the shows in the classroom as well. So that's how we got, Henry Winkler, Linda Carter, Carol Burnett. I mean, we had quite a group of people.
And that is something. I mean, if the kids are talking about maybe being in industry in any way, Carol Burnett. I mean, that's huge. That's major television history. So if you're trying to learn anything about writing or comedy or acting or producing, and these are the kind of questions they were asking too. They were like, well, how do you get a show made? They were really good. So that's incredible. Do you think a lot of them are going to go into the industry, into filmmaking, or what?
There were one or two. I know one girl in my class, Haley, liked dancing and maybe acting. So I think maybe one or two people were inspired by all of our guests. And I think maybe one or two maybe become a journalist. They enjoyed meeting people and asking questions. So I'm hoping. Absolutely.
And the level they were asking questions at, I think they could all be journalism majors. They're very impressive. Who did you get? You got Carol Burnett, you got Henry Winkler. Who else did you get?
Bonnie Hunt, who was great. I mean, we got a lot of Broadway stars. We got Cheetah Rivera.
Oh my God.
Bebe Neuwirth, Donna Murphy. Lucy Arnaz. We had Lucy Arnaz. So, yeah, it was great.
And, some of them, I think, really got at who these people were. And then if they didn't, I mean, years from now, they're going to go, we had Carol Burnett and Lucy Arnaz at our classroom. They're going to go, oh, wow, I had the opportunity to. That's going to kind of blow their minds.
I mean, we watched I Love Lucy every day at lunchtime. So the connection right there. So having Lucy Arnaz come and speak about her mom and dad. It was just amazing. Oh, actually, we had Keith Thibodeau. We had Little Ricky.
Little
Yeah,
Ricky, yes, Little
yeah.
Ricky.
They interviewed Little Ricky.
And now, how did you get all these people? I mean, it was kind of random how you just suddenly appeared somewhere and it's like, hey, can you?
I've had a knack all these years since I was a kid, getting attention from people. So it sort of snowballs. You know, once you meet one person, maybe it'll lead to someone else. I mean, Lucy Arnaz really got us to Carol Burnett.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I pick up
I
my phone.
recall I had my friend Sheena, who has a interview show. She teased me and called me the gateway celebrity because she was interviewing people in music and different. And then she had me on, and suddenly she had all these people from television. She goes, "You're like the gateway drug for celebrities." Suddenly, I have everyone on my show. But yeah, I'm looking at like the stuff you sent me. Your history of meeting and interviewing famous people goes back for there's pictures here, and some of these you're quite young in these photos.
I'm
You
very
are
young
a
in those
mere kid
pictures.
yourself, and you're with everybody. There's everybody in these, but you've met everybody. There's a picture of you with George Burns.
You know, back then, how it started was I used to write to everybody. Remember the Photo Play magazine, Photo
Oh
Play?
my God, yes.
So on the back of the page, last page, is here's where you can write to your favorite stars. So I used to think, well, maybe I'll write, I'll ask for an autograph picture, and that'll be it. But apparently, I wrote some good letters because then the phone would ring at home, and I would get invited to meet these people. So it was the job of my parents to get me there because I was only in my teen years. So it was their job to get me there. So back then, like with George Burns, the secretary worked in the house. You know, they had a room
Right.
with the secretary. I mean, some celebrities still do that, but back then the celebrity had a secretary in the house, and his name was Irving Fine. He was also a producer, and he called the house and said, you know, that George would like to meet you. Maybe your parents could bring you somewhere that were going to be nearby. So he was in Atlantic City, and it all just started from there, and it just all snowballed, one person after the other.
What did your parents do when you went to them and said, guys, can you drive me to Atlantic City because I have a meeting with George Burns?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were all for it. They enjoyed it because people usually ask me, "Well, were your parents in show business?" I'm like, "No, we're not. You know, we're not a show business family." So I think I was just determined.
Hmm,
You know,
hmm.
you grow up watching television all your life, and you know, when you're a kid, and I liked television, I liked film, so I was determined. That was my goal in the beginning. I thought maybe I'll get into acting, and you know, so just started meeting people and talking to people, going to acting school. But then teaching came faster and easier.
But you did go into acting. I mean, what that's the thing I talk about when I introduced this show. I said this show, we talk about the TV shows and the movies that made people feel good. And there's a whole genre of TV and film that, whatever their plot lines, there was something about them that made us feel better about ourselves as people and gave us hope and what have you. And we go back to those and these people, that's why I interviewed so many of them have a story. And you tapped into that. Now, you went to the HB studios. Did you study with Uda?
I
Who'd you
studied
meet?
with William Hickey, Bill
Okay.
Hickey, nominated for an Oscar for Preetzi's Honor, Best Supporting Actor. So he was my acting teacher.
Okay, hard
Interesting.
not gonna go wrong there. And
Yeah.
and you did work. You did work. You're in IMDb. You've gotten on a couple of things.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, where's Waldo type of roles, you know, where you have to find me. But yeah, Flawless in 1999, it was a Robert De Niro, Philip Seymour Hoffman movie.
Sure.
And then over the years, when you meet certain people and they have a TV show, they say, "Oh, you want to come on and just, you know, sit here and do this and do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" So I did a few things like that.
But that's fun. And then how did you get into teaching? Because apparently you're really, really good at. I mean, some people say, "Oh, I took a teaching job," but like I said, those kids were 9, going on 24. So
Yeah.
how did you start doing that?
Well, you know, I went to college at the same time I was going to acting school, and like I said, it happened faster and easier. And you know, it was just a natural thing. It was something I wanted to do. I always say when I was a kid, you know, you used to always play school with your friends, and I always had to be the teacher. I always had to be the teacher. So that's why it was very natural for me. And it's like performing also. I think teachers are performers. They're actors in front of the classroom.
Well, you have to engage them. You have to hold their attention. If you don't do something, if you don't have something going on, yeah, you could have all this great stuff you're going to impart to them, and they're asleep. You've lost them, and it's very difficult. And then during the pandemic, you were having to do some stuff with them in the room. Did you have to do some stuff virtually? How did you transition during that?
When we went back to school in September 2020, there was an option for parents. Their child could be virtual at home, or they could send them back to school and be in person. I was in person. So I had the in-person class. We went to school every day. We went straight to our classroom, and that's where we stayed all day long.
Well, when I came in virtually, and there they all were in their little masks, and they were properly distanced apart, and everybody was like, on it with, doing all that. But they would march up to the front of their class with their paper and ask me all these like amazing questions. So, I mean, when you taught, because you said they're like 9, 10. So what grade are you teaching at that
Fourth,
point?
it was fourth grade,
Fourth grade. So you're teaching all subjects.
all
It's not
subjects.
high school. We
Mhm.
just teach you had to teach everything.
Exactly.
I that has always like just terrified me. I mean, I think of the teachers, teaching English. How do I've always, I gave all my teachers such a hard time. I just have such
Did
sympathy
you?
for all the people who had me in their class, but the poor people who had to stand there and teach all the different subjects all day. How do you even do that?
It's planning, being organized. I'm very organized, and sometimes to a fault. So if
Ugh.
you're organized, for me, it was like a natural flow every day, over 30 years doing it. And I really enjoyed it. When I got to year 20, I needed to mix things up. So I think any job that you do after a certain amount of time, you need to just mix things up. So that's when I started cooking in the classroom, actually, year
And
20.
that's there were book. There's a book because you had the kids. They're like Mr. C. Mr. C takes Manhattan. Mr. C cooks, and so you had these books where there's like a little cartoon on the cover where you're the amazing Mr. C, this teacher who does these things, and you engage the students. So you were teaching cooking in the class with these kids.
I was up in front of the classroom probably teaching fractions for like the 100th time. So I thought to myself, I got to do something a little different. So I thought about, well, why not cook in the classroom? Something simple and easy, where I'm using fractions. So I would do that. I would show them a cooking show different cooking shows on television. And when they were doing certain ingredients, well, a quarter of this, a third of that, I would pause it. I'm like, okay, well, how much is that? So I try to make it a little bit more interesting than just, the book or me writing it on the blackboard. So it was, made it interesting. So we used to watch this cooking show called Mad Hungry with Lucinda Scholar Quinn. It was on the Hallmark Channel and was produced by Martha Stewart. And we used to watch it all the time. So I contacted her, and she was so nice to come out to the classroom and see the kids. And next thing I know, I was on Mad Hungry cooking with her. So
This is brilliant because okay, fractions. I remember fractions were hard. I never remember they started. I was like, ooh, this, and a lot of people had time with it. For learning fractions seemed hard and boring. And the only reason I did finally learn fractions and went, yes, eureka, I got it, is because I love to cook. I was cooking as a little kid. And so when I went, oh, right, half a cup, a third of a cup, duh, it's cups. I had learned to double a recipe. So if something said 1 1/3 cups, it's like, okay, wait, yeah, right. And so I understood fractions, but I thought, how hard is it if you don't have something to relate it to and you're a kid and they're throwing these numbers at you, fractions, what does it even mean? And I always thought they should bring in cooking and say, okay, it's a measuring cup. Come on, you're making cookies. How many cups do you need? That's brilliant. And did it work? Did people enjoy their fractions a little better and get the hang of it?
it did work. They found it more enjoyable. It was more than just writing it down and getting the answer. And she, like I said, she came to the classroom, and then she invited me to be on the show. And after being on the show, she told my story of what I did in the classroom. And that's where the children's books came out after that. A cooking blog came out after that. So that year 20, I reinvented myself.
See, I love this because I have to reinvent myself all the time. Obviously, ex-child star, you gotta like go, okay, what are we doing now? And I had like a big reinvent at 40 and started doing my one-woman show and wound up with the book and the French door. And now, today is in fact my birthday. You're on my birthday show.
Happy
And
birthday.
I am 60 years old as of this morning. Ah! So I'm having to go, well, looks like I gotta come up with more things. And I've always cooked, but during the pandemic, I started doing the thing, reading online, reading little house books, and then I started cooking. And I've been doing cooking and now have some cooking videos on YouTube. And so now I'm going further into cooking. So this is genius. I love this. Perfect that you're on for my birthday, because I am mad for cooking. So it started really with the cooking blog and the class, and then next thing you know, it's the kids cookbook, and now you have this. You have, which I have here, JC in the kitchen, as opposed to
Right.
Mr. C. So we know it's for the grown-ups now.
It's for the grown-ups, exactly.
It's fabulous though, because I'm seeing the recipes. What I'm seeing here, there's a lot of really, really, really simple,
Exactly.
easy.
It
None
is.
of this is like painfully hard. You're going to be
No,
able to make stuff.
no. This can get turned off very quickly.
Yeah, see, that's a thing because I'm working on a cookbook, and mine's here. Who's going to do the cooking? Because Nellie, of course, could not cook, and we had the host who's going to do the cooking thing, and that's what I call my videos because celebrities all have cookbooks. Yeah, how many celebrity cookbooks have you seen and
There's
bought? You
so
probably
many.
dozens. People buy celebrity cookbooks, but they don't cook anything from them. Very rare that they make anything. When I was a kid, I got a book called Cool Cooking, Recipes of Your Favorite Rock Stars. Oh, it's in the 70s. I've made like everything in there. But people buy these cookbooks by celebrities, and they go on the coffee table, and they're pretty, and they look at the pictures, but they look at the recipe, and they go, it's too hard. I can't do that. So I'm into this. How can I make this simple? How can we have easy things that people will really make? And you have done this. I'm looking, the thing I'm looking at right away is a real chicken cutlet sandwich.
I was talking to one of my teacher friends today, but she just received the book and she commented quickly on that one. It's a chicken cutlet sandwich. Instead of bread, the chicken cutlet is the
Literally,
bread. It's the
it's the
bread.
chicken. Yeah. And I looked at it and went, okay, it's a real chicken, none of this. And then I went, wait, it's literally, you make the chicken cutlets with the bread, and then you put the ham and the cheese and everything in between the chicken cutlets and cook it
Between
again. Like twice cook. There's no bread.
lots of napkins for that one, but it's good.
Oh, it's very messy. It's a high protein.
It's high protein,
High protein
or
is,
you could just use a knife and fork and eat it. If you don't want to pick
I
it up
think
like
so.
a sandwich, you could do
Very
that.
messy. But yeah, so basic chicken and asparagus and mushrooms, chicken bruschetta, simple things, walnut chicken, shepherd's pie, which I love. And it looks like you did the potatoes on the bottom and everything. But a lot of the stuff is super simple. And the instructions, like, here's the ingredients, here's the directions, here's the picture, bam.
Yeah, for people who work, it's a lot easier also. You get the ingredients the night before, you know what you're going to do, you come home and you could just prepare a meal in half hour, you're done.
Right, because I'm not seeing things that take days of preparation here.
No, not much
Um,
at all.
which and I'll once in a while I'll do something that takes days to make, and but that's what I like and look, now I do see lots of good ravioli, pomodoro. I see the spaghetti pie. I see the linguine. We have the Italian influence in here. Yes.
Right. The spaghetti pie we make the night before Ash Wednesday because there's pepperoni in it. And people give up meat for Lent and stuff like that. So that's the tradition that you have that the night before um,
That Tuesday.
Ash Wednesday, right? That
Right. The
Tuesday.
actual right. The Monday. But yeah.
Right.
But it looks good. I
Oh,
mean,
it is
it's
good.
like it looks like something kids also would like, and all the spaghetti and cheese and everything all
Mhm.
baked into almost like a noodle kugel kind of thing
Sort
going.
of, right. Exactly, it is.
So when you were cooking, you cooked, obviously you had to have cooked as a small child. Started. I did. Was Contratti? Is that Italian? Is
It is
Sicilian?
Italian. No, it's Italian. Yes. No, not Sicilian, but yeah, I mean, my mother always cooks. She still always cooks. So, and then when I get a little bit older, you know, I would try it myself and do it myself. And then, of course, now I do it all the time. I find it, it's like therapy. Cooking is, I find it very calming, where some people find cooking, you know, it's like a big disaster for them or stressful. I think it's a nice, relaxing thing to do.
That's how I've always liked it. I started cooking. Well, I talked about it. I've told you about it. That when I was very little, I was like 5, and my father took me into the kitchen and said, "This is how we make scrambled eggs." I had to stand on a chair. I couldn't even see the top of the stove. He had me stand on a chair, and he got out the bowl. It's like, okay, and you get the air, get those air into the eggs, and that's why they taste fluffy better. And I showed people to make. First thing I did, I showed people how to make scrambled eggs one day on Facebook, and they were sort of, some people hadn't occurred to them to whip air into them and make them fluffy. Little teeny tiny things like that maybe people didn't, they weren't taught. But I learned to cook as a small child, and I did. I found it relaxing. I enjoyed it. I liked food. I wound up taking like home ec. Do you remember home economics? Did you take home economics in
No,
high school?
I never did. No, took shop.
You do, oh, see, shop back then. We see back then that's right. The boys got shop. You
And
guys
the
got
girls
what?
got home ec.
And the girls, we got the cooking and the sewing.
Right. Okay, but now it's different.
Now they're free for everyone to do. I hated the sewing class. I went to like the counselors. I'm not sitting to the sewing class. I'm not doing this. But I took home at the cooking sake. I think I took it then as an option like 3 to 4 times because I loved it. And on top of what my father taught me, so I learned like the chemistry and the measurements. I learned to cook, and I absolutely. I'll make dinner. Sometimes I'll make dinner even when I'm tired. And sometimes my husband's like, "Don't you want to go out?" And I'm like, "No, I was going to cook something." He's like, "You want to cook some?" I like it. I enjoy it. It's fun to do. It is. It's relaxing, and I like to cook, and I have favorite recipes. And I think that's a kind of personality. Do you find you feel different? Like you're the person who enjoy, like you said, you enjoy cooking, and is it weird when you talk to people and they're like, "No, I hate to cook."
I know a lot of people who hate to cook. And, I don't know what. Maybe it's your upbringing. I mean, I saw cooking all the time. Grandmothers and my mom. So it was just a natural thing that we always cooked. I mean, we never really went out for dinner as a kid. Never went any. I really don't go out for dinner nowadays. Well, nowadays I don't go out for dinner at
I
all.
know who goes out for dinner, right?
But I never really was a person to go out for dinner. I mean, with friends, stuff like that. But I'm the friend who does the cooking, and then you come over here and eat.
Excellent. Now, that's another thing too. That is also a thing sometimes in families where they don't always have. I think some of the families, much like like Little House on the Prairie, the families who don't have all the money wind up having like the better cooks
Hmm.
because there's an
Right.
impetus to say, "Yeah, we're making dinner." So if you're lucky, somebody in your family is a really good cook.
Right. Yeah, that's what we
And
did.
that's it. My father grew up on a farm. They had Zippo, nada. They grew up on a farm. It was the Great Depression. So yeah, they were lucky. They were on a farm, so they had access to all the food. But it was cooking. So he learned to cook very young because he learned to do everything. He was on a farm and there's a huge family, and so he learned to cook. Now my mother grew up in a family where they had like a cook and a maid. My mother never learned to cook. Never learned to cook. Somebody else did that. Nope, 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 nope. So my father did all the cooking, and I noticed that in families where they didn't have as much money. I was just like, well, we're going to kind of make dinner at home. There was a lot more cooking going on.
Right? My father was a butcher, so a lot of
Hello.
meat. So we had a lot of different things. We made a variety of things all the time.
But that's good. Then you'd have access to stuff that other people maybe didn't, or cuts of meat. Because and then I noticed you have some like super vegetarian kind of things in here. There's lots of stuff that's just mushrooms and tomatoes and stuff. But yeah, the pasta, the Italian and pasta chapter is huge in here. And I'm like, yes, yes, I'm totally making that. Totally making that. I'm a sucker for that. My husband's half Sicilian, so yeah. Um, but there's things like broccoli stuffed potato skins with cheese. That's like, how
Simple.
simple is that? That is a totally simple thing. It's like I said, people love that.
Very simple. So there's something in there that someone can cook. There's something for everybody. I mean, there's even like a little recipe in the dessert section about dipping figs in chocolate, and so even kids could do that. So I put that in basically for kids too. That's something they can do.
There are things here like, okay, like the blueberry peach, like you combine blueberries and peach, which is crazy. A lattice pie. I was teaching people how to do pie on one of my videos, and I did one where we made the crust from scratch and then made a very easy filling, did the blueberry filling because it's like blueberries and sugar. And then the apple pie was more complicated. And I did the apple pie. I showed them how to make fake crust, where I said you get the frozen crust, but look, it goes to the bottom. You buy another bottom crust and you throw it on top. Look, and for people who just can't do anything. But when I made the crust, I said, okay, top crust is hard. We're going to do lattice.
Right. It's easy. Once you do it once, it's easy.
And that's the thing. The lattice is easier because you cut it up that way. You're not worried about it breaking or looking perfect because you can cut it in slices and make the lattice. So do you find yourself do you find that you're making them easier for people, or that these recipes are just coming to you naturally, that they're simple because that's what you make?
I mean, I try to keep it easy so people don't get discouraged. I wouldn't want somebody to make one recipe in the book and it's so hard for them, and they're like, "Well, I'm not going to try anything else in the book." So I
I
think
think
it's
I think that's why people shy away from cooking. They'll watch cooking shows and they'll go, "Oh, that's great, but I'm not Julia Child, and there's no way I can do that, and I don't have that
well,
equipment."
her books were complicated. Her recipes were very complicated.
How little. Sure, on her show that I watched when I was a kid, she made it look easy, which was hilarious. She would make these insane things and then be like, "Oh, there's nothing to it."
Right.
You're like, that took 5 days and you have a crew.
Yeah. I mean, I have her books, but they're on the coffee table. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
those are the
I'll
books.
sit there and I'll read them and I'll go, okay, that's going to be a project. Yeah. It's like, and I'll do it. I'll sometimes knuckle down and I'll make like hard stuff because I can. But I know people aren't going to do that. They're not going to do that.
People
And
aren't
that's
going to
why I
spend
try.
2.5 hours on making a dinner
Mm.
unless you got the time to do it.
People get intimidated and freaked out by cooking when I think that cooking, well, like you said, you're the friend who does the cooking and people come over. I think cooking is a real like connecting thing. It's a thing that families and friends do together.
Oh, it is. I mean, there's a little quote in the book, on the back of the book. You know, nowadays that's what it's for, and it's to get people get back together again. And
Right. Okay. You talk about your comfort. Yeah. Cooking and eating ways to gather people. I hope to bring people together, bring them together to come close again. We can find comfort in family and good food during hard times. And I think, and obviously, as you've seen during the pandemic, everybody went nuts. People started baking bread. They ran out of flour and yeast in half the stores out here in
yeah,
LA
that's right.
because everyone went nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I think nowadays everyone's looking for comfort, whether it be food, whether it be watching an old television show. That's what people are looking for, and I think in one sense it's a good thing, to find that again.
And I think so. I think that's a thing that can connect because, yeah, and then there are people like, oh, I can't go to the restaurant, can't go to the restaurant. Oh, wait. And I think they're discovering these things, which, thank God. I think it's a great idea. People learning to cook, they're learning about nutrition, they're making better food. And as you said, the connecting thing. Do you think that's more of an Italian thing? I mean, every family has their the Irish, the French. Everybody says, "Oh, well, we have our traditional things." But the Italian families, I know, as I said, my husband's part Sicilian, and his grandmother was like the freaky deaky amazing cook. But my father was raised in an Icelandic family, and it's not normally a thing people like go, "Oh yes, the Icelandics." The Icelandics are cuckoo for food. The Icelandics have really complicated recipes, but Icelandics bond with food. That was a thing with an Icelandic family. When I finally visited Icelandics in Canada, some relatives, we came in the door and they got out coffee and two kinds of cake that they had made, homemade, two kinds of cake. And then they served dinner.
Then it's a dinner.
And there were like 87 things for dinner. And in case there wasn't enough food, they're passing all these bowls. There was a plate with cold cuts and cheese and bread. So, like in the middle of dinner, you could make a sandwich in case somehow there wasn't enough food. There was so much food. And then there was dessert. And then we went in the living room and there was more cake and coffee.
Are they known for are they known for certain dishes? Was there something traditional there that
They did. They had Wiener Tartar. They had the traditional Wiener Tartar. And Wiener Tartar is a scary Icelandic dessert. My father taught me to make it. I actually can make this. It takes days. It's incredibly complicated. You make these like sort of sugar. I probably put it in my book for like, okay, when you really want to do something, you make these like sugar cookie layers. It's more like sugar cookie dough and has like cardamom and almond, and they're huge. And you kind of bake them on the back of a cake pan. So that's like one whole process. And it's really a sugar cookie dough. So that part's not hard, but then you got to bake these huge layers. And then this thing with prunes, and you're like, prunes, oh my God, but you have the prunes and the sugar, and you totally need a real mixer for this because I actually burned the motor out of a blender making this. It's a prune filling. And then it's layered, so it's like a big black and white cake, and they either soak it in brandy or something like a fruit cake, or they frost it, and it's so sweet. It's so sweet, and it glues your jaw shut like you eat a piece. But this is the big, and it lasts forever. You can stick it in the cupboard; it doesn't go bad. So that's the Icelandic cake. They have a lot of weird stuff. They have a lot of sausage. They were into all like the blood, so a lot of meaty meat dishes, a lot of real farm dishes he was raised on, where I was kind of like, I'll just have the chicken. But a lot of it is that real like Scandinavian stuff, a lot of the fish things, a lot of it's like Norwegian and Swedish cooking. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of desserts. Oh man, the cookies. But their thing is, if someone comes to your home, because either hello, you're in Iceland, or the Icelandics, like the Swedish in Minnesota and everything, they were out on the prairie in the snow. If someone makes it to your house, there's a background of, oh my God, come in, and here's a hot drink and food.
that's their tradition?
That's it. So to me, so they bond. The Icelandics. My father had this thing with people came over. If they came over for 5 minutes, I was like, "Do you want something to eat?" And there was always all this insane amounts of food. And my friends always go, "Oh, that's an Italian thing," and it's an Icelandic thing.
Mhm.
are any of the recipes or the stuff you've done your cookbook, is any of it your mother's, or is it
These,
from your dad's family?
well, the spaghetti pie that we spoke about before.
Yes.
There
Beautiful.
are these Easter turnovers in there.
Easter turnovers?
There's Easter turn up and the dessert section that we make every
Oh, oh,
year. Yeah, that we make every year at Easter time. Yeah, that's one of my mom's. Probably she probably got it from maybe her mom. Yeah, there's things that I grew up with, or a few things in that I grew up with, and then the other ones are just things I put together as the years went on, and that's why you know years back I said, well, maybe I should just write these down and
oh,
put it all
that'll do.
together one day.
Well, it's great. And then with the kids' book, when you were doing, Mr. C in the kitchen, the stuff you'd collaborate with the kids. Now, what kind of stuff is in that? Because that is more oriented
Well,
towards
it's
the
really
kids.
not too much really food in there. It's more like a math book. It's more like it's a children's picture book with sort of like math things in it about a teacher who cooks with his class. It wasn't hard to come up with that story. And just premises a boy does not like math at all. So the
Okay,
tea- so
okay.
the teacher
I can
decides,
identify.
well, maybe we're gonna cook, through math. And by the end of the book, of course, he is much more interested in math. So basically, it was sort of a autobiography of what was going on in my classroom. So that's the first book was Cooking with Mr. C, and that went over pretty well. So then Mr. C Takes Manhattan was the second book, where he takes the whole class to Manhattan and takes them all around to see all the big sites, and which I used to do when we were allowed to go into the city. We get on
Well,
the
now, see,
bus.
that's cool. Okay, you did field trips back in the day.
Oh yeah, we used to go everywhere. We used to
Where'd
go
you
to
take them?
We used to go to Broadway every year. We used to take them to Broadway every year. Yeah.
See, I love you so much. This is so awesome because you remind me, because I had a couple of great teachers and the thing. Okay, I eventually did like figure out math. I eventually got it, but oh man, it was slow going. I don't know how many times I like retook algebra. It was the terrible. I resisted math. I was initially with math. I was like, no, 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 no. But the cooking and like using it in a practical way. My father would tease me and say, put a dollar sign in front of it, dear. It'll all make sense. Um, when I related it to practical things, to money, to food, to cooking, I was like, oh, I get it. So yeah, that book would have been fantastic for me when I was like struggling with math. I had a teacher who took us on amazing field trips when I was a kid. He took us to the theater. We saw the Dybbuk, the music. He would take us to the music center, take us to plays. He took us out to the park where there were like these artists. There was people doing mime and performing and doing music in the park. He introduced us to a guy who taught mime and then had us go out to the park and perform. I mean, completely insane things. And I never forgot that. There's whole sections of school I couldn't tell you what happened. There's entire grades of like nothing. I got nothing. Um, but I remember every field trip that he took us on.
Well, I think,
Every single one.
people sometimes ask me what's my philosophy of teaching, and I always felt it's 50-50. 50 is the curriculum, the things that I'm required to teach. And I always feel the other 50% are my interests that I'm going to teach them about. So whether it be cooking or television or film, I mean, but going back to all the people we interviewed, they interviewed two of the kids from the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, who'd you get? Did you get Veruca?
We got Veruca and we got
So awesome.
Mike TV. We got the
Oh,
two of them.
Eva, Raya, those two. Okay, those two. Yeah, yep.
Yeah. So I think no matter what your interest is, I mean, every teacher has different interests, and I really think that they really should bring them into the classroom. So even if it's like one teacher likes to paint or whatever they like to do, so it's another thing that they're exposing the kids to, and then it makes it for a much more interesting year. I
It makes
mean,
it
you're not
so
going to
much
think,
less boring. I mean, teachers might be resistant, say, "Oh, well, that's my thing, curriculum," but then the students are connecting. If it's just the curriculum, they know you're just reading out of a book.
right. I mean, when they think back to fourth grade, I want them to think, oh, we interviewed Nellie Olson from Little House on the Prairie. They're not going to say, oh, we did fractions in fourth grade. You did fractions in third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade. So give them things that they're going to remember.
Well, you interviewed Henry Winkler. You said you had a Henry Winkler story. I love Henry Winkler. Henry Winkler's a lovely person.
Henry Winkler's a nice guy. So in getting back to my letter writing, in 1999, 2000, him and John Ritter were in a Broadway show called The Dinner Party.
Yes, John.
Right. Yeah. So I was still busy with my letter writing. I'm like, well, I'm going to write a letter to Henry Winkler and tell him, when I was 8 years old, I would get my pajamas on and get on the living room floor and watch Happy Days, and that I would love to meet him. And then, you just send it off and like, well, whatever. He wrote back, and he said, after the show, come back and see me. And it's been 22 years and I still know the man. I mean, I've seen him in person many times. I've had lunch with him out on Long Island when he was filming a TV show called Royal Pains. Virtually, we've seen each other dozens of times. So yeah, he's a great guy. He's one of the nicest people I've met out there.
Henry's always been great. I remember Henry, because you remember Happy Days was on the same lot as Little House. So like everyone was like constantly running into each other in the commissary. We would do all the charity stuff. He was always the telethons. And we would do so many. When you're an actor, you'd be on everything. You'd go on all the charity specials. And some people, frankly, could hardly remember which one they were on. I would sit there and people would be at the thing where we'd have the phones and they go, is this one Easter Seals or March of Dimes? I didn't even remember. They didn't know where the heck they were half the time. Like their agent said, get in the car and go. And they went. I'm backstage in the green room at one of these charity things. And Henry Winkler is sitting there with someone from the charity. And he has a pile of notes. He has printouts of like their annual report and their finances of the whole agency. And he's got a pen and paper and he's going, now, if a donation, say, of 5,000 would pay for what over a year? Now you serve how many clients? And he's interviewing the guy from the charity and getting all these just absolutely excruciating details about what they do and how much it is. And I'm going, no one's doing this. Nobody else is doing this. They don't even care that they're like here. And he's finding out everything. And then, of course, when he went out, and they threw the mic at him, he's like, yes, please send in your right. Did you know that every dollar, what you spent, and he was able to immediately connect to it and tell them why they were raising money. And he was so brilliant. And he was always like that. Anything he did, he invests himself in. He goes all the way. If he shows up, if Henry Winkler shows up, he shows up. He doesn't just, it's the man who does not phone it in.
He's the one who encouraged me to do the children's books because he has a whole series of books himself. So It was him and actually Julianne Moore, the two of them, encouraged me to do this. And actually, the second book is dedicated to the two of them. Mr. C Takes Manhattan is dedicated to Henry Winkler and Julianne Moore.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. And that's another one for children too. Okay. So see, I have to get like all of these now. Yeah. Now you've now got a podcast. This is like the new on top of everything else thing. You've already cooked on TV. Yeah. You got to cook. Now you have a podcast, which you have interviewed me on.
Yes. It got a great reception. Everyone loved your interview and just listening to you. Went over very well.
And I had a very good time. We had a lovely time being interviewed. And it's so crazy. Yeah, now we're doing like everything virtually. I was doing this in a studio. We did it, and then we go virtually, then back in the studio. Now we're back out in the thing. The adapting to everything we've been doing. I have been fascinated by it because obviously as an actress and a comedian, it's been very difficult, but did some shows live last year. And then I've done a bunch of shows in my living room with like crazy pay-per-view stuff. You've adapted very well to all of these terrible circumstances. What is it about you as a person that you think that you've been able to adapt so quickly and find ways to deal and communicate with people virtually if necessary?
Well, virtually, I mean, when you with me and the kids, I mean, that's when I really stepped it up. And in the beginning, I really didn't know how to Zoom, to be honest with you. I had a student in my class, Krish, who would set up all these meetings for me. He would set up all the meetings for me. So
wait, how old is the kid who set up the meeting?
9 years old. He would set up.
The 9-year-old set it up.
He would set up all the Zoom meetings for us, and if he was absent that day, I'd be like, oh no, don't be absent because we got Alison Arngrim tomorrow. Can't be absent. But then eventually I learned how to set up Zoom meetings, and that's why the podcasting, I launched it a couple of weeks ago, and I've interviewed a bunch of people so far. And
was I your first guest? No.
You were my first guest.
Yeah.
It premiered on New Year's Eve. So some people got to spend New Year's Eve with the two of us.
Lovely. Who'd you get after? Because you know everybody.
Well, no, I interviewed Carolyn Hennessy I think you know Carolyn, right?
I know her, love her.
Okay. I interviewed an actress, Felicity Montague. She's a British actress. She was in Bridget Jones' Diary.
Great.
Right. And she did a BBC series with Henry Winkler based on his books, the Hank Zipser books. She's currently on Landscapers. It's on HBO Max. She plays Olivia Colman's mother.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. Um, I just interviewed a theater director, an artistic theater director in Manhattan, and we spoke about how we're going to get theater back going based
Yes,
on what's been
please.
happening. I've done an indie author. I did Paul Kreppel from It's a Living. That's coming up soon. Potsy, Anson Williams coming up.
Love that.
When we were talking about you, so you have to listen how your
Oh,
name
my
came up
ears are
during the
burning.
interview.
My ears are
Yours
burning. You were talking
right?
about, oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that same kind of thing. I'd never Zoomed. I'd never Zoomed until 2020. I had done a Facebook Live once because Wendy Luley, who played Baby Grace on Little House, had taught me to do it once. And then it's just like I said, I started doing the Facebook Live, and the next thing I know, I was Facebook Live, Be Live, Zoom, Stageit.com, everything. And if you had told me a few years ago I'd be doing this like that, I'd no. I mean, like I said, I got to hire a 9-year-old to come in or something, but I figured out how to do it.
Right.
And now I said do the cooking, and I'm going to be doing the cookbook. We're finding new ways to connect.
Right.
And we're trying to get back into it. I was able to go to New York in September and do some shows live, Rochester Fringe, a Caveat, nice little club, and I'll be back in May. So we're kind of going like back and forth as the North.
How long do you stay in New York for when you come in May?
Just a few days. I'm doing the Laurie Beachman Theater finally reopened, my favorite place. And so I'm doing the Mother's Day show. And so you'll come over. It'll be great. We'll do, you'll come to the show. You'll be in town. I'm usually for a few days, just a few days, not very long. So we should hook up or something. We should talk.
Right. Yeah. Come to the house for dinner.
Come to the house. We'll come to the house for dinner. What's your favorite thing? Do you have a favorite thing you make? Is there a favorite thing?
Chicken dishes, seafood.
That was my favorite to eat, of course. Yeah. I get asked, of course, for cinnamon chicken because Little House on the Prairie, they saw it on the show. And so shockingly, I found a really great recipe for cinnamon chicken. So I at least could go, yes, the cinnamon chicken. It's amazing. Like I said, this adapting to stuff, and with the kids, they were so sharp. They were so on it. Like you said, you really had them engaged. I think the field trips had done that. You really got them, their minds in that kind of set. With the pandemic and all the stress, yet when those kids, that class I spoke to and I saw them, they seem relaxed. They seem engaged.
You never knew what was going on outside of my classroom. And that was my job. When I went back to school, I thought to myself, all right, we're going back in a very, unusual time. And my job was to make them walk into that classroom and forget about everything that's going on. And we did. I forgot about everything. It was great. It was the greatest school year I ever had. I really, some people say, oh my gosh, you had to stay in the classroom all day and you really couldn't go anywhere. It was the greatest school year ever. And they were like the greatest, but I've had great classes over the years. These kids were just unbelievably great. And
they were really brilliant, because I was like, you're not 9. They were so good. They were like, as an actor, do you feel with your career, how do you get? And I'm like, they were so smart. But there you go. See, it's the connecting. You put them into a safe space where they were able to focus. Their stress levels must have been so much lower than everybody else in New York. I mean, the fact that they were able to go, okay, I can now focus on something good and do this.
I would drive to school in the morning and you would hear about these talk show hosts who were doing their shows from home, radio personalities complaining, but doing their shows from their home. All us teachers and kids, we were going to school every day. We were going to school every day. So I used to laugh at all these people, celebrities who are home and, doing their program from home and just sort of complaining about it. I'm like, we're going out every day. So when we went to school every day, we were fine the whole entire year. We were very lucky. And like I said, what could have been like, a miserable year, it was just like the most amazing year. Thanks to people like you. Thanks for people like you being a part of it.
I've been doing a lot of stuff out of my house, and at first it was weird. I love it. It's kind of great. I mean, I can't tell you how many things I look at now, interviews and stuff I've done. You know, I used to get all dressed up and get in my car and drive all the way across town. And by the time I got there, it was all sweaty, and I had to redo my makeup. But like now, I walk out to the living room. I get to control the lighting.
Yeah.
I do. I'm good at doing makeup and hair, so
I mean,
I do
even
good
your
makeup.
friends, even your
I
friend
can
Melissa, even your friend Melissa Gilbert did it for us. She did it for us too. Yeah, sure.
And isn't she fabulous? You had, they're gonna, and they must have gone home and told their parents. I just had Laura Ingalls and Melly Olson coming into
Yeah,
my class
they
here about
loved it. Yeah, but and the parents were very thankful. They would thank me, saying, they're coming home every day and we're watching it at nighttime all together. So that means my job. I did my job.
you did your job. But yeah, it's the engaging people. I think you're very, very smart. The stuff you did with the kids, and then the stuff you're now doing with the cooking, and now with the podcast, it is absolutely, you're getting people together, you're engaging people, pulling them in, and encouraging them to do things creatively and to engage with each other.
Right.
It's such a good idea. Such a good idea.
So it's like I'm reinventing myself again with the cookbook, with the podcast. So, and then we'll see in a few more years what else I'll do. We'll see.
Well, I'm looking. You can look for, because I will be cookbooking and cooking showing.
Well,
Definitely, that's going to be a thing in the next few years.
You
So
got to come on my show when your cookbook comes
I
out.
will come on your show. You will come on my show again. We will do this. Well, you'll come on my cooking show. I'll have you on and you'll cook, and
Okay.
then we should totally make something together. This would be
Okay.
Where do people find you? There's a website, obviously. Amazon. All the books are on Amazon.
All the books are on Amazon or Mascot Books if you want to go through the publishing company.
Mascot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cooking with Mr. C. John Contratti is on Twitter, and the blog.
What's your Twitter handle? You're easy enough to find because it's easy to spell. It's John Contratti, but you're cooking with Mr. C. You're cooking with Mr. C on Twitter.
On Twitter also, right? Yeah, that's what it is. Yep, and I have a blog called Cooking with. Just type in Cooking with Mr. C or my name when you Google it.
And your podcast, how do they find the podcast?
Podcast, well, it's called Up Next with John Contratti. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher.
Everything where I wind up, yes, because this rolls over and is on everything.
Yeah.
We start here and then we're everywhere.
We're doing it. We're all doing it.
And do you think you'll do more acting? Is that going to be a thing?
Well, you know what? I recently was asked about something because I have more time now. So I think once things calm down, if something comes up here in New York, someone mentioned something, we'll see. I'll be coming.
We don't know.
You don't know. I'll come on your show. You'll get the exclusive. How's that if something comes up?
Okay. You don't know. If anybody told me I've been doing all this 10 years ago, no way. And like I said, when I wound up doing my one-woman show and going to France, if someone had told me a few years before, yeah, you're going to spend like 12 weeks of the year in France doing a show in French, I'd have gone, no, you don't. You don't know what's going to happen next.
Right. I think once things calm down and things hopefully get back to normal, I think that's when something acting-wise will happen.
And I think it's going to go up and down. They said these numbers are going to go down. Maybe we're going to get hit with something later, but this particular one that we're going through, this particular peak is going to, then the numbers are going to come back down. We're going to have different shots and more things. And I bought new masks and I got tests coming in the mail, and we find ways to adapt. Whatever they throw at us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just keep moving on.
All right. Well, it's just like I said, I couldn't, your class blew me away. Those kids, I can't, someone should do a documentary and follow those kids up in like 10 years and stuff.
I really wish there was a documentary from day one with us. That would have been cool if they would have followed us the whole entire year. I think
it's amazing how smart they were, the stuff they were asking. So, but this is great news for those of you out there who are fans of your favorite TV and movie stars. You never know. Sometimes you write the right letter, and next thing you know, your parents are driving you to Atlantic City to meet George Burns.
Exactly. It's amazing. Rosemary Clooney, Jack Lemmon. I mean, it's just like it's the craziest. It's just crazy.
So are you going to do another book that's going to be about all the fabulous people you've met?
Everyone keeps telling me that's what I should do next. Actually, I am working on an adult novel.
Oh, hello. This is new. Yes.
And it has a more school theme, fictional characters. So that'll be next. But everyone says I should just tell the whole story of the 100+ people that I've met or I know. So
it's kind of amazing because it said just, a nice little Italian boy going, I write a fan letter. I got my photo play. I got an address. And then it just turned and snowballed into this. And then to the point where you've got, Lucy Arnaz speaking your school. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. You should write about that. So yes, proof that you never know. And
you never know.
you don't know till you try, that someone who is just like a regular person can one day meet all of these famous people, that we can find ways, even in the worst circumstances, to connect and engage.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for having me on your show. Thank you for coming on my show.
Thank you for having me on your show.
All right, we'll go on each other's cooking shows, and it'll be fun. And then I'll be in your book. And
then
yeah.
we'll have our own show one day.
We'll get our own show. We should do a show. We should do a show. Yeah.
We should do a talk show.
All right. Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. John Contratti, and get his book. JC in the kitchen. Also, all the kids' books. Really interesting stuff. And yeah, I looked at these recipes, and I am the queen of simple cooking, simple, who's going to cooking. This is all easy. There's one recipe. Look, okay, here you go. This has four sentences are the instructions. And it's fillet of sole. Here it is. Dip the fish into the egg and the breadcrumbs. Put it in the skillet with the oil. Then you get the tomatoes and the onions and the shrimp. And then it's four things. There are four instructions. And it's just like that. That's how easy it is. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
This is the Alison Arngrim Show, and I'm Alison Arngrim.